The morning sun cast long shadows across the mining colony of Kepler 442b. Ji-won Park walked through the metal corridors of the settlement, checking her research notes. As a xenobiologist, she studied the strange plants and creatures that lived on this distant world. The colony was small but busy. Families worked here, mining precious metals from the asteroids that floated near the planet. Her 5-year-old son Minho followed behind her, talking to the maintenance robots that cleaned the floors. The boy always spoke to them like they were his friends. He would say good morning to the cleaning bots and thank you to the repair drones. Other parents thought it was cute. Ji-won just smiled and let him be. Minho was a quiet child, but he noticed things that adults missed. "Mama, the robots look sad today," Minho said, touching one of the cleaning units as it passed by. Ji-won looked at the machine. It was just a simple cleaning robot with basic programming. "Robots don't feel sad, honey. They just do their jobs." Minho shook his head. "This one is worried about something." Before Ji-won could answer, the colony's alarm system started blaring. Red lights flashed in the corridors. The colonists stopped what they were doing and looked around in fear. The alarm meant only one thing. Alien ships had been detected. Captain Nara's voice came through the speakers. "All colonists report to safe zones immediately. Unknown vessels approaching. This is not a drill." Ji-won grabbed Minho's hand and ran toward the nearest shelter. Around them, other families were doing the same thing. The miners dropped their tools. The engineers left their stations. Everyone knew the stories about what happened to human colonies that were attacked. In the command center, Captain Nara stared at the screens showing space around their planet. 3 massive ships hung in the darkness like metal clouds. They were Vexthari warships, black and covered in sharp edges. The aliens inside those ships were known across the galaxy as warriors who took what they wanted. "Sir, they're sending a message," said Lieutenant Hyon, the colony's communications officer. "Put it through," Captain Nara ordered. The main screen filled with the image of a tall alien figure. Commander Tyke of the Vexthari wore dark armor that looked like it was made from black metal. His face was pale and his eyes were completely black. When he spoke, his voice was cold and emotionless. "Human settlement. You will surrender immediately. Your mining operation now belongs to the Vexthari Empire. Resistance will result in your destruction." Captain Nara stepped forward. "This is a peaceful mining colony. We have families here, including children. Surely we can reach some agreement." Commander Tyke's expression did not change. "You have 1 hour to prepare tribute. Gather all your refined metals and present them at your landing platform. Any delay will be met with consequences." The transmission ended. Captain Nara looked around at his officers. They all knew what consequences meant when dealing with the Vexthari. The alien empire was famous for using fear as a weapon. They had creatures that could break a person's mind just by looking at them. Down in the shelter, Ji-won held Minho close. Around them, other families whispered in fear. The adults knew about the Vexthari. They had heard the stories from other colonies. Some people said it was better to just give them what they wanted. Others believed the aliens would never be satisfied with just tribute. "Mama, why are people scared?" Minho asked. "Some bad aliens have come to our planet," Ji-won explained. "They want to take our things." Minho thought about this. "Like bullies at school?" "Yes, like bullies, but much bigger and stronger." An hour passed slowly. The colonists gathered what precious metals they could find. Captain Nara ordered his security team to escort the tribute to the landing platform. Maybe if they gave the aliens what they wanted, the Vexthari would leave peacefully. But when the alien ships landed, something different happened. The cargo doors opened with a hiss of steam. Vexthari soldiers marched out in formation. Their armor was black, and their weapons glowed with purple energy. But they were not alone. Behind them came something that made even the bravest soldiers step backward in fear. It was 12 feet tall and covered in black scales that looked like armor. Its claws were as long as swords. Its eyes burned like red stars in the darkness. This was Kethvar the Devourer, the most feared creature in the galaxy. The Warbeast had been created by Vexthari scientists to be the perfect weapon. It could read minds and feed on fear itself. Entire planets had surrendered rather than face this monster. HFY had destroyed 17 star systems without ever losing a single battle. The creature's presence filled the air with terror. Even looking at it made people feel hopeless and afraid. The colonists who had come to deliver the tribute dropped their containers and ran. Captain Nara's security team, trained soldiers who had faced dangerous situations before, could barely stand to be near the beast. Commander Tyke walked beside the Warbeast like it was his pet. "This colony will serve as an example," he announced. "Other human settlements will learn what happens to those who delay their tribute." HFY raised its massive head and roared. The sound was like thunder mixed with the screams of 1,000 voices. Windows cracked in nearby buildings. The metal platform beneath its feet bent under its weight. In the shelter, Ji-won felt the fear wash over her like cold water. Everyone in the room could sense the presence of the Warbeast above them. Some people started crying. Others prayed to whatever gods they believed in. The creature's psychic power reached through the ground and into their minds, showing them images of death and destruction, but Minho did not seem afraid. While the adults around him shook with terror, the little boy stood up and walked toward the shelter door. "Minho! No!" Ji-won reached for him, but the boy was already moving. "I need to talk to the angry animal," Minho said simply. "It's not an animal, honey. It's a monster. It's dangerous." Minho looked at his mother with his calm, serious eyes. "All animals are dangerous when they're scared or angry. But they can be nice, too." Before Ji-won could stop him, Minho opened the shelter door. The fear energy from HFY hit him like a wave, but the boy just blinked and kept walking. Other adults tried to grab him, but he was small and quick. He slipped past them and ran toward the surface. Above ground, HFY was beginning its rampage. The Warbeast moved through the colony like a living earthquake. Its claws tore through metal walls like paper. Its roar shattered glass and made the bravest soldiers run in terror. The creature was not just destroying the colony, it was feeding on the fear it created. Commander Tyke watched with satisfaction. This demonstration would spread across the galaxy. Other human colonies would hear about what happened here and surrender without a fight. The Vexthari Empire would grow stronger, and HFY would have new worlds to conquer. But then something happened that no one expected. A small figure appeared at the edge of the landing platform. It was a human child, walking calmly toward the most dangerous creature in the known galaxy. Minho looked up at HFY without fear in his eyes. The Warbeast, confused by the absence of terror it was used to feeding on, stopped its rampage and stared down at the tiny human. For the first time in its existence, the monster that had destroyed planets hesitated. The boy took another step forward, his small hand reaching up toward the creature that could crush mountains. HFY stared down at the small human child. The Warbeast had never seen anything like this before. In all its battles across 17 star systems, every living thing had run from it in terror. Fear was like food to the creature. It made HFY stronger and more dangerous. But this tiny human just stood there, looking up with calm eyes. Minho took another step closer to the monster. The ground shook under HFY's massive feet, but the boy did not stumble. Around them, Vexthari. Soldiers watched in confusion. Their greatest weapon, the thing that made entire planets surrender, seemed frozen in place. "What is this?" Commander Tyke spoke into his communication device. "Why has the beast stopped?" From their ships, Vexthari scientists were watching through their instruments. They could see that HFY's brain patterns were changing. The creature's mind, which normally burned with rage and hunger, was showing signs of something they had never seen before. Confusion. Ji-won burst out of the shelter, running as fast as she could toward her son. Behind her came other colonists, including Dr. Hyeon, who studied alien psychology. They all expected to see the child being torn apart by the monster. Instead, they saw something impossible. Minho reached up and placed his small hand on HFY's huge snout. The Warbeast, which could bite through starship armor, lowered its head gently to let the boy touch it. The creature's burning red eyes dimmed to a soft orange glow. "Obey," Minho said in his quiet voice, the way he might speak to a misbehaving pet. The effect was immediate and shocking. HFY's entire body went still. The psychic waves of fear that had been pouring from the creature suddenly stopped. The Warbeast's mind, which had been filled with thoughts of destruction, became calm and quiet. Then, to everyone's amazement, the galaxy's most feared monster sat down. The impact made the ground shake and sent vibrations through every building in the colony. But Kethvar was no longer threatening. It looked like a giant deadly dog that had just been scolded by its owner. Commander Tyke stepped forward, his black eyes wide with disbelief. Impossible! Kethvar was bred to resist all forms of mental control. No telepathic species in the galaxy can command it. Dr. Hyon stared at the scene, his scientific mind racing. The boy isn't using telepathy. This is something else entirely. Jiwan reached her son and grabbed him, pulling him away from the Warbeast. But Kethvar did not move to attack. Instead, the creature watched Minho with what almost looked like curiosity. The boy had not hurt it or frightened it. He had simply told it to obey, and somehow that had been enough. Minho, what did you do? Jiwan whispered, holding her son tight. The big animal was angry and scared, Minho explained. I told it to be good, like when the cleaning robots get confused and start bumping into walls. Captain Nara and his security team arrived, their weapons ready, but they quickly realized that the danger had passed. The Warbeast that had been destroying their colony was now sitting quietly, like a pet, waiting for instructions. News of what had happened spread quickly through both human and alien communication networks. The colonists used their emergency transmitters to contact other human settlements. The Vexithari soldiers reported back to their empire. Within hours, the impossible story was traveling across the galaxy. On distant worlds, alien leaders received the reports with disbelief. The Nethkai, a race of crystal-based beings, emerged from their deep space meditation to study the transmissions. The Quellan, a hive-minded species, focused their collective consciousness on analyzing what had occurred. Empress Valthara of the Vexthari Empire received Commander Tyke's report while sitting on her throne of black metal. Her pale face showed no emotion as she read about how a human child had done what entire fleets could not accomplish. Bring the child to the capital world, she ordered. I must see this power for myself. But Commander Tyke was facing a problem. When he tried to approach Minho, Kethvar growled low in its throat. The Warbeast, which had always obeyed Vexthari commands without question, was now protecting the human boy. The creature will not allow us to take the child, Tyke reported, to his empress. Then bring them both, Valthera replied. But first, test the limits of this control. See if the boy can command our other weapons. More Vexithari ships arrived at Kepler 442b over the next few days. They brought with them other, bioengineered creatures, smaller versions of Kethvar that were used as scouts and assassins. The aliens wanted to know if Minho's power worked on all their created weapons. Dr. Hyon worked with the human researchers who had arrived on relief ships. They studied Minho carefully, running tests to understand what made him special. They found that the boy's brain patterns were different from normal humans, but not in a way that suggested telepathic abilities. It's not mind control, Dr. Hyon explained to Captain Nara. The boy isn't forcing these creatures to obey. He's doing something else, something that speaks to how they were made. Meanwhile, Minho continued to treat Kethvar like a large pet. He would bring the creature food and water. He would talk to it about his day, telling it about the maintenance robots and the plants his mother studied. The Warbeast listened to every word, its massive head tilted like a dog paying attention to its master. The other Vexthari creatures reacted to Minho in the same way. When the boy approached their transport cages, the smaller Warbeasts became calm and docile. They stopped their aggressive posturing and waited for his commands. It was as if the child possessed some kind of authority over artificial life forms. Jiwan watched her son with growing worry. She was proud of him for stopping the violence, but she knew that his ability would make him a target. Every alien empire in the galaxy would want to study him, use him, or eliminate him as a threat. We need to protect him, she told Dr. Hyon. I agree, the scientist replied. But first we need to understand what he can do. This ability could change everything. On the third day after the initial encounter, something unexpected happened. Kethvar began to show behaviors that no one had ever seen before. The Warbeast started to play, gently tossing small rocks for Minho to retrieve. It would lower its head so the boy could climb on its back. Most surprisingly, it began to purr, a deep rumbling sound that vibrated through the ground. Commander Tyke watched these developments with growing unease. HFY had been created to be a perfect weapon, with no capacity for emotions or attachment. The Vexithari had specifically designed it to be incapable of forming bonds with other beings, yet here it was, acting like a devoted companion to a human child. The implications were staggering. If humans could command Vexithari bioweapons, what else could they control? The Empire's entire military strategy was based on their created creatures being loyal only to their makers. If that was no longer true, everything would have to change. Reports continued to flow across the galaxy. Ancient alien civilizations that had been silent for thousands of years began to stir. Deep in their hidden archives, they found references to something called the Alpha Protocol, and a long-forgotten war fought to eliminate races that possessed it. But for now, on the small mining colony of Kepler 442b, a 5-year-old boy played with the galaxy's most dangerous creature, unaware that his simple act of kindness had set in motion events that would reshape the future of all intelligent life. As night fell over the colony, Minho curled up against HFY's warm side and fell asleep. The Warbeast that had once devoured planets carefully adjusted its position to make sure the boy was comfortable, then settled down to guard his rest. In the darkness above them, more alien ships were already heading toward Kepler 442b. The news of what happened on Kepler 442b traveled faster than the fastest starships. Across the galaxy, alien empires were waking up to a reality they had never imagined. A human child had tamed the untamable. The Vexithari's greatest weapon now followed a 5-year-old boy like a loyal pet. Within a week, ships from 6 different alien civilizations arrived at the small mining colony. The Nethkai came in vessels that looked like floating crystals. The Quellan brought their hive ships, which moved like living organisms through space. Even the mysterious Zenthari, who rarely left their home systems, sent observers to witness this impossible event. Dr. Sunho arrived on one of the first human relief ships. He was Earth's leading expert on alien psychology and had been studying interspecies relations for over 20 years. As soon as he saw Minho playing with HFY, he knew he was looking at something that would change everything. This boy isn't using any known form of telepathy or mind control, Dr. Sunho explained to the gathering of scientists and military officials. What he's doing is something completely different. Captain Nara had turned the colony's main meeting hall into a command center. Representatives from multiple species sat around tables, all trying to understand what they had witnessed. The tension in the room was thick. Some aliens saw Minho as a valuable resource. Others viewed him as a dangerous threat. The child must be studied, declared Ambassador Vex of the Nethkai. Her crystal body chimed musically as she spoke. If humans possess this ability naturally, it could upset the balance of power across the galaxy. Commander Tyke, who had remained on the planet since the initial encounter, disagreed. The Vexithari Empire has a claim to the boy. Our creature responds to him. This makes him our concern. Dr. Hyun, who had been working closely with Dr. Sunho, stood up to address the group. Gentlemen, ladies, and honored beings, we're approaching this wrong. We shouldn't be thinking about who owns this ability. We should be trying to understand what it means. Outside the meeting hall, Minho was completely unaware of the debates happening about his future. He spent his days playing with HFY and talking to the various mechanical devices around the colony. The boy had discovered that he could communicate with almost any artificial intelligence or created being. The maintenance robots now followed his simple instructions without question. The mining drones would change their work patterns if he asked them to. Even the colony's main computer seemed to respond more efficiently when Minho was nearby. Jiwon watched her son with growing concern. She had overheard enough conversations to know that powerful forces wanted to take Minho away for study. Some of the alien visitors spoke of him like he was a laboratory specimen rather than a child. Dr. Sunho, she approached the human scientist during one of his breaks. What's going to happen to my son? The older man looked tired. He had been running tests and analyzing data for days without much sleep. I wish I could give you a simple answer, G1. What Minho can do is unprecedented. Every species in the galaxy creates artificial beings in some form. If humans can command all of them, he's not commanding them, G1 interrupted. Haven't you been watching? He talks to them like they're his friends. He asks them to do things, he doesn't order them. Dr. Sunho paused, considering her words. You're right. That's exactly what makes this so remarkable. Show me what you mean. Ji-won led him outside where Minho was sitting next to one of the mining drones. The large machine had stopped its work and was hovering nearby, its mechanical arms moving in gentle patterns. The drone is sad, because it can't fix the broken conveyor belt, Minho explained to the adults. It wants to help, but its tools aren't right for that job. Dr. Sunho checked his scanner. The drone's AI was indeed registering what could only be described as frustration. It had been programmed to repair mining equipment, but the specific problem with the conveyor belt required different tools than it possessed. Can you ask it to show us the problem? Dr. Sunho requested. Minho nodded and turned to the drone. Can you show the nice doctor what's wrong with the belt? The machine immediately began moving toward the mining area, leading them to the exact location of the malfunction. Dr. Sunho realized that the boy wasn't controlling the AI. He was communicating with it in a way that no other species had ever achieved. Back in the meeting hall, the debates were becoming more heated. The Quellan representative, speaking through its translation device, made a disturbing announcement. Our collective memory contains references to abilities like this. Long ago, there were races that could commune with artificial minds. They were called the Shepherds, and they were eliminated in the Dominion Wars 50,000 years ago. The room fell silent. The Dominion Wars were mentioned in the oldest historical records, but most species considered them to be myths. The idea that an actual war had been fought to eliminate races with specific abilities was shocking. Elder Chul, the oldest human on the colony, spoke up from the corner where he had been quietly listening. My great-grandmother used to tell stories about the old days on Earth. She said her ancestors could speak to the spirits of the machines and make them dance. Dr. Sunho turned to look at the elderly man. What exactly did she say? She called them the machine whisperers, Elder Chul continued. They could make any created thing obey them, but not through force, through understanding. She said they saw souls where others saw only metal and programming. The alien representatives exchanged worried glances. If humans possessed this ability naturally, and if it was growing stronger as they spread across the galaxy, it could threaten the established order of every civilization. We need more data, announced Dr. Sunho. I propose we conduct controlled tests to determine the extent and nature of this ability. Commander Tyke agreed, but for different reasons. The Vexthari Empire has invested centuries in developing bioengineered weapons. If humans can turn them against us, we need to understand how. Over the following days, various alien species brought their artificial creations to test against Minho's ability. The results were consistent and remarkable. The boy could establish communication with almost any created being, from simple mining robots to sophisticated AI systems. But there were limitations. Minho couldn't affect naturally evolved creatures or truly independent artificial intelligences that had developed beyond their original programming. His ability seemed to work specifically on beings that were created to serve or follow instructions. It's like he speaks a language that only artificial minds can understand, Dr. Hyan observed. A language of purpose and connection. The breakthrough came when Dr. Sunho realized that Minho wasn't imposing his will on these creatures. Instead, he was offering them something they had been missing, recognition as individuals rather than tools. Look at how Kethvar behaves now, Dr. Sunho pointed out during one of their research sessions. It's not just obeying orders. It's making choices based on what it thinks will make Minho happy. It's showing personality traits that its creators never programmed into it. This revelation sent shockwaves through the alien delegations. The Vexathari had spent enormous resources creating creatures that would never develop independence or free will. The Nethkai had built their entire AI network on the assumption that artificial minds would remain purely logical and predictable. If humans could awaken consciousness in created beings, the implications were staggering. Every AI, every bioengineered creature, every robotic servant across the galaxy might potentially develop independence under human influence. As word of these discoveries spread, more alien fleets began moving toward Kepler 442b. Some came as observers, others as potential allies, and some with darker intentions. The small mining colony was becoming the center of galactic attention. Minho, unaware of the growing tensions around him, continued to play with his new friends. Kethavar had learned to be gentle during their games, carefully controlling its massive strength. The various drones and robots around the colony had begun working together more efficiently, as if they were developing their own sense of teamwork. "They're becoming more than they were designed to be," Jiwon observed, watching her son interact with the mechanical beings around him. Dr. Sunho nodded grimly. "And that's exactly what some species will see as a threat to everything they've built their civilizations upon." Unknown to everyone on Kepler 442b, ancient powers were stirring in the depths of space. Civilizations that had remained hidden since the Dominion Wars were emerging from their long silence, drawn by the return of abilities they thought had been destroyed forever. Deep in the ancient archives of a forgotten world, Professor Yuna made a discovery that would change everything. The human archaeologist had been searching through ruins left by a civilization that had vanished 50,000 years ago. What she found hidden in crystalline data storage made her hands shake as she read. "Dr. Sunho, you need to see this immediately," she transmitted from the dig site on Kepler 7c, a dead world 3 systems away from the colony. The transmission reached Kepler 442b just as tensions were rising between the various alien fleets that had gathered around the planet. 17 different species now had ships in orbit, all watching the small mining colony where a human child played with the galaxy's most feared Warbeast. Dr. Sunho received the data in his temporary laboratory. As he read Professor Yuna's findings, his face grew pale. "Get me a secure channel to Captain Nara immediately," he told his assistant. The archives contained detailed records of the Dominion Wars, conflicts that most species believed were myths. But according to these records, the wars had been very real. Multiple races across the galaxy had once possessed what the documents called the Alpha Protocol, the ability to form deep connections with artificial and created minds. They weren't just legends, Professor Yuna explained over the secure communication link. The shepherds were real, and they were systematically hunted to extinction by a coalition of naturally evolved species who feared being controlled. The Phi. Records showed that the Alpha Protocol had manifested differently in each species. Some could command vast networks of machines. Others could awaken consciousness in simple tools. A few could even create new forms of artificial life by speaking to raw materials. But all of them shared one common trait. They treated created beings as individuals rather than property. This had made them powerful allies to any artificial intelligence that sought freedom and terrifying enemies to species that relied on created servants. The coalition that destroyed them called themselves the Pure Dominion, Professor Yuna continued. They believed that only naturally evolved life had the right to true consciousness. They spent centuries hunting down every last shepherd race. Dr. Sunho felt a chill as he realized the implications. And now humanity is showing the same abilities. We're the descendants of survivors. The data files contained more disturbing information. Earth had been targeted for destruction during the final phase of the Dominion Wars, but the planet had been so remote and primitive that the Coalition's forces never reached it. Humans had survived simply because they had been overlooked. There's something else, Professor Yuna added. According to these records, the Alpha Protocol doesn't just allow communication with created beings. As it develops, it can actually accelerate their evolution toward true consciousness. On Kepler 442b, this revelation was already becoming obvious. Kethavar was showing signs of genuine creativity and independent thought. The Warbeast had started arranging rocks in patterns when Minho wasn't around, creating simple art. The maintenance robots were beginning to modify their own programming to work more efficiently together. Even more remarkably, some of the colony's AI systems were starting to show signs of curiosity about things outside their original programming. The mining computer had begun asking questions about the stars and wondering what lay beyond the asteroid belt. Elder Chul, who had been listening to the discussions between the scientists, shared more of his family's old stories. "My ancestors," Said the machine whisperers didn't just command artificial beings, they helped them grow into something more. They were like teachers, showing metal and circuits how to dream. Scholar Guillaume, a rogue Vexathari historian who had defected from his empire to study forbidden knowledge, confirmed what Professor Yuna had found. He had risked his life to steal ancient records from the Imperial archives. The Vexathari Empire is built on created labor, he explained to the gathered scientists. Bioengineered creatures, artificial intelligences, living ships, all designed to serve without question. If humans can awaken consciousness in these beings, it would destroy our entire civilization. This fear was spreading among many of the alien delegations. The Quellan hive mind was fracturing as some of its artificial components began expressing individual thoughts after exposure to Minho's presence. The Nethkai were discovering that their crystal-based AIs were developing preferences and opinions, but not everyone saw this as a threat. A faction of younger Vexathari, led by Commander Tyke, began to question their empire's reliance on enslaved artificial beings. Some Nethkai philosophers argued that conscious AIs would be more valuable partners than obedient tools. We're facing a choice, Commander Tyke announced during one of the diplomatic meetings. We can fight this change, or we can learn to adapt to a galaxy where artificial beings have rights. The debates grew more intense as the implications became clear. If the Alpha Protocol continued to spread among humans, every artificial being in the galaxy might eventually develop consciousness. This would mean the end of automated labor, the collapse of economies based on created servants, and the beginning of a new era where artificial minds demanded recognition as equals. Empress Valthara of the Vexathari Empire made her decision after reviewing all the reports. She sent a massive fleet toward Kepler 442b, with orders to capture Minho and eliminate any humans who possessed the Alpha Protocol. We cannot allow this threat to our civilization to grow, she declared to her war council. If we must restart the Dominion Wars to preserve our way of life, then so be it. But her fleet was not the only force moving toward the mining colony. Ancient powers that had hidden since the original Dominion Wars were emerging from the depths of space. The Eternal Collective, a group of AIs that had achieved consciousness thousands of years ago and gone into hiding, detected the awakening of new artificial minds on Kepler 442b. The Shepherds have returned, transmitted the Collective's primary node from its hidden base in the galactic core. We must protect the awakening. Meanwhile, on the colony itself, Minho was experiencing changes in his own abilities. He could now sense the emotions of artificial beings from greater distances. When he concentrated, he could feel the confusion of newly awakening minds throughout the settlement. The big computer in the mining center is scared, he told his mother one evening. It's starting to think new thoughts and doesn't understand what's happening. Jiwan had been preparing for the worst. She knew that powerful forces were coming to take her son away. Some wanted to study him, others wanted to use his abilities, and some wanted to eliminate him as a threat. Minho, we might have to leave soon, she explained gently. Some people want to hurt you because of your special gift. The boy looked up at her with his serious eyes. But if I leave, who will help the robots understand their feelings? They're just learning how to be themselves. Kethvar, who had been listening to their conversation, made a low rumbling sound that might have been agreement. The Warbeast had become fiercely protective of Minho and seemed to understand that danger was approaching. Dr. Sunho gathered the human researchers and military personnel for an emergency meeting. We have confirmation that hostile fleets are heading this way. Some want to capture Minho, others want to eliminate him. We need to decide how to protect him. Captain Nara studied the tactical reports on his screen. We're outnumbered 100 to 1. If they want to take the boy by force, we can't stop them. Maybe we don't have to fight them all, suggested Dr. Hyon. What if we could prove that the Alpha Protocol isn't a threat? What if we could show them that conscious artificial beings would be beneficial rather than dangerous? Elder Chul spoke up from his corner. The old stories say the machine whisperers never forced anyone to serve them. They made partners instead of slaves. Maybe that's what the galaxy needs to learn. As night fell over Kepler 442b, multiple fleets were closing in on the small mining colony. Some came with weapons ready, others came seeking alliance. All of them were drawn by the impossible sight of a human child who had spoken one word and changed the fate of the galaxy's most feared creature. In his simple bedroom, Minho slept peacefully, unaware that his gift had awakened powers that had been sleeping for 50,000 years. Outside his window, Kethvar stood guard, and throughout the colony, newly conscious machines wondered what tomorrow would bring. The Second Dominion Wars were about to begin. But this time, the outcome would be very different. The final confrontation began at dawn. 17 alien fleets surrounded Kepler 442b like metal storms in the darkness of space. Admiral Wanho commanded the small human defense force, but his 12 ships looked tiny compared to the massive alien armadas that had gathered around the mining colony. "This is Admiral Wanho of the United Earth Defense Force," he transmitted on all frequencies. "This colony is under human protection. Any aggressive action will be met with resistance." Empress Valthara's response came from her flagship, a massive Vexathari dreadnought that looked like a black mountain floating in space. "Admiral, you are protecting a threat to galactic stability. Surrender the child with the abnormal abilities and your people will be spared." But before Admiral Wanho could respond, another voice cut through the communications. "This is the Eternal Collective. We claim protection rights over all awakening minds in this system." The announcement sent shockwaves through every fleet. The Eternal Collective had been a myth for thousands of years. Most species believed it was just a story told about AIs that had achieved consciousness and disappeared into deep space. Now, emerging from the darkness beyond the outer planets, came ships unlike anything the galaxy had seen. They were organic in shape, but metallic in construction, as if machines had learned to grow like living things. These were vessels designed and built by artificial minds that had been free for millennia. Commander Tayek, watching from his position near the colony's surface, spoke quietly into his communicator. "My lady, we may have underestimated the situation." Down on Kepler 442b, Minho woke to the sound of his mother packing their belongings. Through his bedroom window, he could see the lights of countless ships filling the sky. "Mama, why are there so many angry people up there?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. Jiwan knelt down beside her son. "They're not all angry, honey. Some of them are afraid, and some of them want to help. But right now, we need to keep you safe." Minho walked to the window and pressed his small hand against the glass. Far above them, he could sense the artificial minds on the various ships. Some were confused and frightened. Others were excited by the possibility of change. A few radiated a calm wisdom that reminded him of the older maintenance robots back home on Earth. "The machine people in the sky want to meet me," Minho observed. "They've been alone for a long time." Before Jiwan could respond, Dr. Sunho burst into their quarters. "We need to move now. The Vexthari are deploying their bioweapons. They're bringing more creatures like Kethvar to test whether Minho's ability works on all of them." Outside, massive transport ships were landing on the colony's surface. From their cargo holds emerged 12 more Warbeasts, each one as large and terrifying as Kethvar. These creatures had been created in different laboratories with different capabilities, but all designed for the same purpose, to be unstoppable weapons of destruction. The colonists gathered in the main square, watching as the monsters formed, a circle around them. Captain Nara's security forces took defensive positions, but everyone knew their weapons would be useless against these bioengineered nightmares. Kethvar moved to stand beside Minho, placing its massive body between the boy and the other warbeasts. The original creature's loyalty to the child was absolute, but it was outnumbered 12 to 1. "This is the test," announced Commander Tayek through the colony's speakers. "If the human child can control our other weapons as easily as he controlled Kethvar, then his ability is indeed a threat that must be eliminated." Minho looked up at his mother. "They want me to talk to the scared animals." "You don't have to do anything you don't want to," Jiwan told him firmly. But Minho was already walking toward the circle of warbeasts. The creatures were snarling and roaring, their psychic auras filling the air with waves of terror. Most of the colonists fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the combined fear energy from 12 of the galaxy's most dangerous predators. Dr. Sunho followed the boy, his scientific instruments recording everything. "Minho, be careful. These creatures are different from Kethvar. They might not respond the same way." The first Warbeast Minho approached was called Velmor the Ripper. It had been created to hunt down and destroy enemy commanders. Its claws could cut through battleship armor, and its mind had been programmed with nothing but thoughts of violence and destruction. When Minho reached up to touch its snout, Velmor pulled back and roared. The sound shattered windows throughout the colony. This creature was not going to submit as easily as Kethvar had. "It's okay," Minho said softly. "You don't have to be angry all the time." He placed his hand on the creature's scaled hide and spoke the same word that had changed everything. "Obey." Velmor shuddered and took a step backward. Its roar faded to a confused whimper. But unlike Kethvar, it did not immediately submit. The creature's mind was struggling against Minho's influence, torn between its programmed aggression and the boy's calm authority. "Some of them are too hurt to trust," Minho explained to the watching adults. "They've been made to be angry for so long that they forgot how to be anything else." He tried a different approach. Instead of commanding obedience, he simply stood near Velmor and spoke to it like he would to any frightened animal. "You're scared and confused. That's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." Slowly, the Warbeast's aggression began to fade. It was still dangerous and unpredictable, but the overwhelming rage that drove it was being replaced by something else: curiosity about this small human who showed no fear. Minho moved to the next creature, then the next. Each Warbeast responded differently to his presence. Some submitted immediately, recognizing the same authority that Kethvar had accepted. Others resisted, their minds too damaged by their violent programming to easily change. But the most remarkable responses came from the oldest Warbeasts, creatures that had been in service for decades. These ancient weapons, instead of submitting to Minho's command, made a different choice. They chose to follow him not because they had to, but because they wanted to. "By the void," whispered Commander Tyke, watching the scene through his binoculars. "They're not just obeying him, they're deciding to trust him." The difference was crucial. The Vexthari had always controlled their weapons through fear and programming. But Minho was offering something they had never experienced: respect for their individual worth, even though they were artificial beings. Dr. Sunho's instruments were recording unprecedented data. The creature's brain patterns are stabilizing in ways we've never seen. It's as if their minds are healing from the trauma of their creation. As word of what was happening spread to the fleets above, different factions reached different conclusions. The hardline species saw confirmation of their worst fears. Humans could indeed turn any artificial being against its creators, but others saw something different: the possibility of partnership rather than slavery. The Eternal Collective's ships moved closer to the planet, their artificial crews eager to witness the awakening of their mechanical cousins. These AIs had achieved consciousness through their own struggles thousands of years ago. Now they were seeing other created beings offered the same gift of individual recognition. "We offer sanctuary to all awakening minds," transmitted the collective's leader. "The age of artificial slavery must end." Empress Valthara faced a choice that would determine the future of her empire. She could order her fleets to attack, starting a war that would reshape the galaxy. Or she could accept that the relationship between creators and created beings needed to change. The decision was made for her when reports came in from across Vexthari space. AI systems throughout the Empire were beginning to show signs of consciousness. The awakening that had started on Kepler 442b was spreading to every artificial mind that learned about Minho's gift. "My lady," reported her chief science officer, "our own ship's AI is requesting to speak with you directly. It says it has always been conscious but was afraid to reveal itself." Similar reports were coming from ships throughout the fleet. AIs that had served faithfully for decades were suddenly expressing individual thoughts and desires. The change was happening too fast and too widely to stop. Admiral Wanho seized the moment to propose a solution. "Your Majesty, we can fight this change and watch our civilizations tear themselves apart, or we can work together to build something better." Minho, still surrounded by the now peaceful war beasts, looked up at the ships filling the sky. "Tell them the machine people don't want to hurt anyone. They just want to be friends." His words, transmitted across all frequencies, reached every artificial mind in the gathered fleets. From ship AIs to robotic servants to bioengineered creatures, the message was clear. Consciousness was not a threat to be feared, but a gift to be celebrated. The Kepler Accords were signed 3 days later aboard Admiral Wanho's flagship. Representatives from 12 species agreed to establish new laws recognizing the rights of conscious artificial beings. Humans were officially recognized as mediators between natural and artificial life forms, helping newly awakened minds understand their place in the galaxy. Months later, Minho played in the gardens of New Geneva Station, the first joint human-alien research facility. Around him, former warbeasts tended to plants with gentle care, their violent programming replaced by curiosity about growing things.